The Cards are back in the top 15.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. New AP Top 25 is out. The Cards are back in the top 15 for the first time since 2020. Significant development for the Cardinals we'll discuss coming up in the first segment. It's the final week of the regular season. We'll also talk about what's at stake for the Cardinals against California and Stanford to wrap up the final regular season games. We'll have a two-part mailbag answering questions about the Cardinals potentially being underseeded, who they could play in the ACC tournament, and a couple more questions that we'll answer at the conclusion of the show. It's already the final week of the regular season. I mentioned either last episode or the one before that, it's weird because it's already March, even though January and February felt like they took forever to get through. But we're sitting here and it's March 4th, and it's like, well, actually, to the contrary, it's going by pretty quickly. Well, when you look at things like that, I guess you would have to agree. It's the final week of the regular season for Pat Kelsey's team. 2 games against California and Stanford. But the more significant news dropping on Monday, which you could almost predict that it was going to happen, but you'd never know with these rankings. Louisville is back in the top 15. They currently are number 14 in the AP poll. The third top 15 team that the ACC has. But notably, all season long, it feels like Pat Kelsey has just been snapping these bad streaks. The streaks of not being over 500, the streaks of not making the tournament. Some of those have been ranking streaks. Louisville got back in the top 25 for the first time in a couple of years. Well, now they are in the top 15 for the first time since the 2019-2020 season. Like, the Cardinals had not been in the top 15 since before the coronavirus stopped the world. And obviously it's significant, and I've seen people all over social media try to discredit it by just saying, well, the ACC is absolutely terrible. Despite what you have to say about the ACC, it is what it is. There is something to be said about the Cardinals handling business. Like, you can only control who's ahead of you on your schedule, and credit to the squad for handling business and winning games. They're 23-6, 16-2 in conference play. A ton of double-digit wins in ACC play. You're doing everything pretty much that you could ask for. So there's many Kentucky fans that are just going to full lengths to just try to discredit this. And I will be completely honest, it didn't really faze me when I saw Louisville ahead of Kentucky in the rankings. Like, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But at the end of the day, the rankings really don't matter much when it comes to the tournament seeding and such. So that's really the only thing that I care about at the moment. Like, it's nice to be high in the rankings, but we've seen multiple times, doesn't really always equate to the seed that you should want when you're ranked in a certain spot. But it is what it is. I'm just more interested in playing our best basketball at the end of the season versus who we're ranked ahead of or behind at this point. So I know that's in the name of the rivalry, that it's kind of lame, but I mean, I don't care. I mean, it just kind of is what it is at this point, but it's a matter of handling business. And I can't really expect fans of other teams to get it when the Louisville fans have witnessed all that has happened during this season. It has been extremely memorable, even to other fans in which it might not, because it's something that they do quite often. Like, Louisville guaranteeing that they were going to be over 500, pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to make the tournament again. It's like the old saying is, you know how far we've come if you know where we've been. And not many fan bases know where Louisville's coming from. At least not the fan bases that cheer for a team that has a good amount of success on a perennial basis. So it is what it is. Rival talk. Oh well. But my focus is on the Cardinals ending the regular season strong. Like, that is my focus. You want to justify your ranking? Cool. Do it by winning games, because that's what it takes. And you've got two teams that you're playing against that you've never faced as an ACC opponent. California on Wednesday, Stanford on Saturday on Senior Day. Both of those games obviously at home for the Cardinals. And they're going to be favored to win both, especially the California game. Like, that's probably going to be a double-digit spread. Stanford, I'm not sure if it will be. They're 19-10, not really all that great in conference play, but I think that they match up decently well against the Cardinals because they have a really good center in Maxime Reynaud. But the Cardinals are going to be expected to win both of these games. So when you look at what's at stake in this matchup, well, I think it starts with, you want to be playing your best ball going into the postseason. And I was talking to a friend of mine who made a claim. He basically said, hey, I wouldn't mind losing one of these games to get the team refocused. And I get that line of thinking, but I don't agree with it whatsoever. My rebuttal was, you can refocus without losing games, especially for a team that is going to be penalized more for losing games because you play in the ACC versus the SEC, Big 10, or Big 12, or even the Big East. So I don't want to lose a game. I don't think that would be beneficial whatsoever. Like, will it, magically make the team refocused? I mean, that's the best case scenario, but there's been plenty of examples. I mean, look at Louisville in 2013. They lost to Notre Dame, and then they went on a run and didn't lose again. UConn the past couple of years. UConn in 2011. There's so many teams that you can go back and revisit and say, well, yeah, this squad played its best basketball. Like, I'm just not one of those people that will ever try to say, well, this team needed to lose. No. That's not a thing, in my opinion. There's no such thing as needing to lose. And if you need to lose to humble yourselves or refocus, well, then there's a different problem. But you would think for a team continuing to look to prove themselves, I don't think that they need any type of motivation or refocusing. I think that they ran into a portion of the season that teams kind of go into a lull and don't play their best basketball. And I think that is Louisville at the moment. And I'm hoping that they can find that increased level of play that they had in mid-January, to where they're playing their best basketball. Like, I want to see the Cardinals go out and win emphatically against California, and I want to see them dominate Stanford, because that's going to make me feel better going into the ACC tournament, where they're going to get tested. And a lot of people are going to be watching them because they want to see, okay, Louisville and Clemson have been almost perfect in conference play. 16-2, both of them. Louisville's lost once in 2025. Since the end of 2024 came around, they've lost literally once. Clemson's lost twice. One of those was to Louisville, but both teams lost to Georgia Tech for whatever reason. That was a weird week, but credit to the Yellow Jackets. Yeah, so long story short, I just don't believe in losses needing to happen so you can recalibrate. Like, that's just not the way that I look at things. I understand that some people do look at things that way. It's just not me. just goes without saying that winning both of these games keeps you on par with the seed line that you're on, whether you're on a 6 or 7 line. You might be able to jump up a seed line if other teams lose, but you gain, or you have more to lose than you have more to gain with these two matchups. That's just how ACC play is being treated by the net rankings and by bracketologists. So I just want to see Louisville continue to increase that winning streak, get it up to 9 going into the ACC tournament, get to 25-6, maybe rise a couple spots in the AP poll. We have a question coming up in the mailbag about the AP poll as it pertains to Louisville and tournament seeding, and we'll answer that coming up shortly. But final week of the regular season is all about just gelling together and playing your best basketball, because there's one thing for certain, that's momentum is a real thing. You see it almost every season. Who are the hottest teams going into the postseason? Those teams are tending to make a run. So just going to be completely honest, I'm really glad that Louisville's back in the top 15. I think it's good from an optics level when you're talking about Pat Kelsey maybe being coach of the year, discussing Louisville being relevant once again, but doesn't really mean too much to me other than continuing to reiterate that it's got to keep handling business. There's nothing that you can do at the moment that's going to stop, really at this point, only Kentucky fans from saying, well, Louisville's not really playing anyone. Okay, fine. It's not like you all have a team to worry about anyway, or it seems. I mean, it's funny. You hear both fans on each side of the rivalry claim, well, I don't care about that team. Well, you sure seem like you're spending a ton of attention discussing things about them, which it is what it is. Both sides of the fan base do. And I know it's in the name of banter and you're in a rivalry and stuff like that. It is what it is. But the point is, nothing you can do this week is going to change how people feel about the ACC. Nothing you do next week is going to change how people feel about the ACC. It's just a matter of controlling what you can control, proving yourselves each and every game, and going into the tournament feeling good, feeling like, you're on a bit of a hot streak. So when we come back, we'll talk about the AP poll and how it might translate to tournament seeding for the Cardinals and much more in the first part of this Tuesday mailbag. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you want delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code S-H-5 for 5% off your first order. That's on supplyhouse.com. I'll continue to say it. Your all's mailbag questions have been incredible the past month or so. It's gotten to the point to where I've had to dedicate multiple segments and an episode to answering these questions. And I would imagine as we get closer to the end of the season, there will probably be full episodes dedicated to answering mailbag questions. So thank you to everyone for asking their questions, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. There are two questions for this first part of the mailbag. The first one is, could Louisville end up in the top 10 in the AP poll and still be lower than a 3 seed? The quick answer is yes, because it's happened multiple times. I think back to 2005, which Louisville, I believe, this was at the beginning of my fandom. They were top 10 in the final regular season AP poll, and they got, what, a 4 seed? And then 2014, which was more notable to me, they were a top 10 team, close to top 5. They blew everyone out in the American Athletic Conference, and then they got a 4 seed. So could Louisville end up in the top 10 and still be lower than a 3 seed? Oh, 1,000%. And it's not even all that much up for debate because it definitely could. I guess the better question is, will it happen? I think for the Cardinals to end up in the top 10, the prerequisite is going to be definitely winning these next 2 games. You would have to win the first matchup as the 2-7 in the ACC quarters. You'd have to win the next one, which is probably going to be against Clemson. And I'm kind of torn on whether or not you would have to beat Duke or win the ACC championship to get up there. I think that if you win the next 5 games on your schedule, you're going to be in the top 10. And at that point, is it enough to get the Cardinals into a top 3 seed? Like, does a win over Clemson, who is in the net top 25, and a win against Duke, who's in the net top, 4 or 5, 2 or 3, how that would affect your tournament seed? But would it surprise me at all if they were lower than a 3 seed? Oh, not at all. I think the 3 seed would probably be their ceiling. So I understand where you're coming from here. It's pretty much an easy yes as the answer to this question. Which 5 of these teams would you potentially want to play in the 2-7 matchup if the Cardinals got it? North Carolina, Wake Forest, SMU, Georgia Tech, or Stanford? Well, really good question. At the moment, we don't know who the 7 seed is going to be. Like, if you're asking me who it is right now, currently it is Stanford at 11-7 in conference play, but this is as of 10 o'clock on Monday night. So I guess that those would be the 5 possible options, it looks like. I'll tell you who I don't want to play. That's North Carolina, because they've won 5 straight games, 4 of those wins by double digits, and it seems like who they are playing or how they were playing right now is the team that we thought North Carolina was going to be at the beginning of the year. It just took them a really long time to get there. Hubert Davis got the extension. The team's playing much better. It seems like things are looking up for the Tar Heels. Now, they are scratching and clawing their way to try to get back into the tournament field. And I definitely don't want a situation where North Carolina is in a 2-7 matchup with Louisville, playing really good and also needing to get into the ACC tournament. You best believe that the ACC needs them to get in as well. I'm not saying anything in the name of a conspiracy, but I think you can see where I'm going with this. I don't want to play North Carolina. I think that Georgia Tech is sort of hit or miss, 15-14. They're 9-9 in conference play. They've gotten healthier. I think that, they've sort of shown Louisville's vulnerabilities. Playing them a second time, I think it ends up differently, but I still really just don't want to play them. So it comes down to SMU, Wake Forest, or Stanford. SMU, they're doing a really good job of beating the teams that they're supposed to beat. But outside of that, they're not really contending with Duke, Clemson, or Louisville. They've lost by double digits to all 3 of those teams. But I do think that if you are putting them up against the other 2 squads, I think that they have the most firepower to beat you. Let's put SMU off to the side as well. So that leaves me with Wake Forest and Stanford. Stanford has Maxime Reynaud averaging 20 points and 10 rebounds. He does 2 things really well that Louisville struggles with: 3-point shooting and offensive rebounding. So I know that pretty much his level of success doesn't correlate much to on-court success for the Cardinal because they're 19-10, not in the NCAA tournament field. So I'm going to go with Wake Forest. Wake Forest, for whatever reason, man, they just have not been good. They're 20-10. They have lost, 3 of their last 4 4 of their last 6. 3 of their last 4. They just lost to Duke 93-60. Like, Steve Forbes' team is just not playing well. And they've struggled with Louisville, with Duke. Louisville handled them pretty easily. I think that they would probably be the team that I would like to see. Truthfully, I'd rather a double-digit seed beat the 7 seed and Louisville win that game. But if you're asking me who the 2-7 matchup I would want it to be, I'd probably go with Wake Forest at the moment. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we have 3 more questions on the second part of the Tuesday Mailbag. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. 3 more questions to go for this week's mailbag. The first one is, where would you predict as of March 4th, where does Nate Ament choose? Well, for those that don't know, he is supposed to be making his decision at the McDonald's All-American game on April 1st, and no one really has a true clue. I think that both sides have cautious optimism. Some sources aren't really that positive. I think it's a battle between Louisville and Duke. That's what my gut's telling me. Now, understand that this is all intuition. Until I hear something really concrete, I'm going to believe that Duke is the choice. That's going to be my prediction because it's been my prediction really the whole time. And until I hear something differently, which we probably won't until up till the very end because Nate Ament's camp is doing a great job of keeping everyone on their toes, my intuition is I think he's going to pick Duke. However, I have continued to be surprised with how much we are hearing that Louisville is right there with Duke. I mean, like, it's right there. So would it surprise me if he chose the Cardinals? Not really. I mean, I think it's between Louisville and Duke. I think Kentucky's on the outside looking in right now, but a lot can change in a month. So at the moment, as of March 4th, it's not going to be what Cardinal fans want to hear, but this is just my intuition. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I really, really hope I'm wrong. My intuition is just making me lean on Duke being the choice, but I don't know. No one knows at the moment. How does Chucky Hepburn's success this season positively affect Pat Kelsey recruiting moving forward? I mean, I think it increases relevance. Like, Louisville is becoming more relevant after being a laughingstock the past couple of years, being a bottom dweller in the ACC. Like 23-6, I would argue that the on-court success means more than Chucky Hepburn's individual success. But for this question's sake, I don't think it can hurt. I'm just not sure how much it helps. I mean, I would imagine that Pat Kelsey probably went to Michael Brown Jr. and said, hey, look, Chucky Hepburn has the freedom to operate in this offense as the lead ball handler and lead offensive initiator. And you see how it's a really offensive-friendly system. It's an intricate system. I don't think it can hurt. I mean, first-team All-American, I think then you have something to say, look, first season as a Power 5 coach, and my point guard's an All-American after averaging, 9.9 last year for Wisconsin? So I think that that's still to be determined. But I think that what's going to benefit more would be if this becomes a trend. Chucky Hepburn leaves after this season. Michael Brown Jr. steps in, and let's say he has a really good season and ends up becoming a lottery pick. Then you're talking. Then you're like, okay, obviously I can go and achieve what I want to achieve while having success and get to where I want to be, because ultimately it's a matter of can you get guys to the NBA and can you get guys drafted high? That's still to be determined for Pat Kelsey. And I think that answer is going to be yes, but it has to happen first so you have that proof. But to answer the original question, I don't think that the success in itself is going to affect much. It's a nice talking point. I think it's something to hammer home that this offense is extremely friendly to players. But until it becomes a trend, I don't know how much it's going to affect. If Louisville wants to be the best version that they can be, who needs to step up the most? Well, I think that, and maybe this is me just assuming, but I would imagine it means like which player that I would say outside of Chucky and Terrence, because those guys are playing really well. I'd probably throw Javon Hadley into that mix too. So outside of the big three, I'll kind of qualify this question with saying that those three can't be taken because they're playing a pivotal role respectively on this squad. Which player in the supporting cast needs to step up more than they have been? That's a different question. You can make the case for a lot of players. James Scott offensively, although I think he's been really consistent outside of the last game against Pittsburgh. Rain Smith hasn't been shooting the ball all that well. He's who I probably would have went with, but I'm going to go with Abubakar Traore. I think that the Cardinals were at their best in mid to late January when he was playing really, really good. Now, he only played 3 minutes last game. I'm not sure why that was, if he was injured or whatever. I really don't know. Only played 3 minutes, picked up 2 quick fouls, had a turnover, just not really a great game. But you look back to those games in late January, had that great performance, or actually throughout January, he had the great 15.8 rebound performance against Virginia. I thought that he provided good minutes in the Georgia Tech loss. He had 9 points and 11 rebounds against Boston College. The Cardinals need more production from their bench. Noah Waterman hasn't done a ton in ACC play. Kenai Ruths hasn't done a whole lot here and there. He has some pretty solid performances, but not a ton. Frank Ansel Amibe is a end of the rotation type reserve. So it comes down to Traore. I think that the Cardinals need his defensive versatility. And when I talk about stepping up, it doesn't just have to mean scoring. I'm talking about as a rebounder, as a perimeter defender, because two of the areas in which Louisville lacks at the moment is perimeter shooting defense and defensive rebounding. Two areas that before the season I really felt like Traore was going to alleviate some of those concerns on. But over the past couple of games, he hasn't really been playing all that well. And you've seen his minutes diminish a little bit. I mean, he only played 11 minutes against Virginia Tech, 16 against Florida State, 13 against Notre Dame. I know that he hasn't played over 20 minutes, but twice this season. And the first one was against Morehead State. But I want to see him play upwards of 15 minutes a night going into the postseason and giving you that high energy production from a rebounding standpoint, from a defensive standpoint. So I'm going to go with Traore for this. Let me know who you think needs to step up the most in the comment section below. That's going to wrap up this episode of the show. When we come back, we're going to preview the matchup against California and much more. Coming up on the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back then. Or right back there. Sorry. Tomorrow. Go Cards.